So let's talk about a problem that's actually a really good sign. Your beloved orchid, it's just grown too big. It's bursting out of its pot, and you're wondering what to do. Well, it's time to scrub in and perform a little plant surgery. We're going to take that one magnificent overgrown plant and turn it into several healthy new ones.
It sounds weird, right? How can a plant be too successful? But that's exactly what's happening. When your orchid fills its pot to the brim, with roots and bulbs all jammed up against the sides, it means you've done such a good job that you've created a beautiful problem. So what's really going on inside that crowded pot? Well, once it hits that critical mass, it's no longer a happy home. The plant is literally choking itself out. The oldest parts start to die back, the potting mix breaks down into mush, and the new growths have absolutely nowhere to go. It's fighting itself for light, for water, for nutrients. To save it, we've got to step in.
To solve this beautiful problem, we need to think like surgeons. And what's the very first step? Diagnosis. We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with before we even think about making a cut. And that diagnosis starts with a little Orchid Anatomy 101. I mean, you wouldn't operate on a person without knowing how their body works, right? Same deal here. Knowing the basic structure of our orchid is absolutely key to a successful operation. So, the majority of the orchids you probably know and love, think Cattleyas, Cymbidiums, Oncidiums, they're what we call sympodial. This just means they grow sideways, along a creeping stem called a rhizome. It helps to think of it less like one single plant and more like a whole colony of interconnected growths all marching forward. That rhizome, that's where we'll be making our cuts.
And look at these things, the pseudobulbs. These fat, swollen stems are the plant's secret weapon. They are little power packs, total energy and water storage tanks. They're what allows the orchid to survive stressful events, like, being chopped up by us. Protecting these is priority number one.
And this little chart really shows you why that anatomy matters so much. See, our sympodial orchids grow sideways, storing their energy in those pseudobulbs, so we divide them by cutting the rhizome between the bulbs. That's completely different from monopodial orchids, like your classic Phalaenopsis, which grows straight up from a single stem. That's a whole other procedure. Today, we are all about the sympodial system.
Okay, we know our patient's anatomy. Now it's time to prep the OR. And I cannot stress this enough. This next part is maybe the single most critical step in this entire process. We have to be obsessed with sterility. It's completely non-negotiable. Why? Because this is the #1 risk. Every cut you make is an open wound, and through that wound, you can accidentally transmit nasty, incurable viruses that will weaken and eventually kill your entire orchid collection.
The two big villains you need to know about are Cymbidium mosaic virus and Odontoglossum ring spot virus. They live in the plant's sap, and all it takes is one microscopic droplet of that sap on your knife, on your workbench, even on your fingers, to infect the very next plant you touch.
So how do we fight an invisible enemy like that? We use fire. Seriously, the professional standard is heat sterilization. Sure, you can use chemical soaks, but they take a long time to work. A simple propane or butane torch, on the other hand, heating your blade until it's almost glowing red, that instantly guarantees you've destroyed any virus. It's fast, it's 100% effective, and you have to do it between every single plant. No exception.
All right, our tools are sterile. We understand our patient, and we're ready to go. It is time for the main event, the surgical division.
First up, you've got to get the plant out of the pot. And listen, don't be gentle with the pot. If the plant is really stuck, wrap the pot in an old towel or newspaper and just break it with a hammer. It's better to sacrifice a cheap pot than to destroy the root system. Next, take a hose and just blast all that old decomposed bark away. Then it's time for triage. Take your sterile cutters and snip off every single root that's mushy, black, or hollow. You only want to leave the firm, healthy ones.
Now, here it is, the single most important rule of this entire operation. 3 to 5. Every new plant you create must have a minimum of 3 to 5 healthy pseudobulbs. This is non-negotiable. That's the magic number that ensures it has enough energy stored in those little power packs to survive the shock and push out new roots and new growth. Anything smaller is just, well, it's not likely to make it.
But what if you're dealing with a real monster? A giant Cymbidium clump that's so dense and woody you can't even get a knife through it. Here's a fantastic pro tip. Grab 2 garden forks, shove them into the root ball back to back, and then just pry the handles apart. It feels a little brutal, I know, but it's an amazing trick for getting the leverage you need to split those massive plants.
Of course, the exact cut depends a little on the patient. For our Cattleyas, you're looking for the best place to slice that rhizome to create those divisions with 3 to 5 bulbs. And just for context, that's totally different from how you'd handle a leggy Vanda, which involves top cutting. or with some dendrobiums where you're just gently separating little baby plantlets, or keikis. Different plants, different techniques.
Okay, the surgery is done. The divisions are made. But we are not finished yet. Just like with any major operation, the post-op and recovery phase is every bit as critical as the procedure itself. Let's talk about wound care, and specifically about cinnamon. You hear about it all the time. But here's the deal. It's not really a fungicide. Its real power is that it's a desiccant. It dries tissue out. That is fantastic for the big cut surface of the rhizome. It helps it form a nice, protective scab. But, and this is a big but, if you put that cinnamon on the delicate roots, it will dry them out and kill them. So use it precisely only on the rhizome cut.
And now for what is easily the most important and definitely the most counterintuitive piece of advice for aftercare. For the first 1 to 2 weeks after you repot your new divisions, how much water should you give the roots? The answer is 0. A big, fat 0, not a drop. This gives all those cuts and broken root ends time to heal and form a callus, which prevents rot from setting.
So you're probably asking, wait, if I'm not watering it, how does the plant survive? It's a great question. The answer is through the air. You want to keep the plant in a humid spot, and you're going to miss the leaves, the foliage, frequently. The plant can absorb all the moisture it needs right through its leaves while its roots are down below, healing safely in dry potting mix.
Last step, potting. 3 quick rules. 1. Don't overpot. Pick a pot that gives the plant just enough room for about 2 years of new growth, and that's it. 2. Use a fresh, chunky, coarse bark mix that lets tons of air get to the roots. And 3, and this is huge, make the plant stable. An orchid that wobbles in its pot will constantly break off its new, fragile little root tips. Use stakes, use rhizome clips, whatever it takes to lock it down tight.
And that's it. You did it. You took one overgrown, struggling plant and you've successfully turned it into multiple healthy, vibrant new orchids, all with the potential for amazing flowers. The operation was a complete success. So the only real question left is, which one of these new lives are you going to nurture first?